Welcome back to America's Commercial Real Estate Show. I'm Michael Bull. This segment is brought to you by Apto. Check them out at apto.com. Great CRM system that does a whole lot more. Well, today we're talking about social media for business. My next guest is Dr. Eric Bray. He is associate professor with the University of Wisconsin-Stout. And I heard him speak at an event where I was speaking, I think, as well, and we were covering the event, and he had some great information related to social media. Dr. Bray, thanks for joining us on Skype today.
Thank you for having me. I greatly appreciate it, Michael.
Well, thank you, and I'd like to start with time. You know, time is our most precious commodity, and you know, and some people feel like, you know, maybe social media doesn't have a whole lot of cost to it, but obviously anything that takes our time costs us money. So what are some tips that you would give our audience related to efficiency with their social media business practices?
I think that the first step really to thinking about efficiency is just setting aside some time, whether it be right away every day or a couple of times per week, just knowing that for that 20 minutes, that 15 minutes that you're going to sit down and you're going to think about what has to be done from a social media standpoint. When I talk to businesses and work with other folks in other areas, the hardest thing that people have to do is to find that time. And when you start scheduling in advance, that really does create that need. It's just like another meeting. It's one of those things that you have to do. And once you create that meeting, from there are a lot of available tools that you can use to save time and use your resources wisely. And I like to use a program called Hootsuite. Hootsuite is just one of those programs where you can manage all of your various social media channels and outlets without actually having to log in. As we all do, we're all on social media, and the more channels that you're on, the harder it is to keep up. So if you're on Facebook, you're on Twitter, you're on Snapchat, it is very time consuming to actually go into each of those channels or those programs to manage your online profile. A place like Hootsuite allows you to automatically log in, see what people are saying, look at various streams, threads of information, and make posts that you can schedule right now, 3 days from now, without having to log in individually. It doesn't seem like much, but when you can do all of your social media in one place, that to me is the key to being effective and efficient.
Yeah, that's a good point. So, you know, sometimes I see people posting a good bit during the day, and sometimes you may think, does this person ever work? Well, they're using something like Hootsuite, right, where they're timing out their post. Another thing that you just mentioned there that I'd like you to elaborate on a little bit is watching social media for like keywords and key phrases, right? Talk to us about that with using something like Hootsuite.
Well, there's kind of two ways you can think about tracking keywords or key hashtags, if you will. And the first one is to look at what are your customers, your residents, what are they interested in? And once you understand who your customer is and what they like, you then follow those keywords to make sure that you're in the know and you're tracking the important things that your core customers are concerned about. You know, when we think about, commercial real estate, when you think about residential, you have two very different groups of customers that have very different interests. And once you understand what those interests are, you can then track those keywords, and that helps you come up with content, whether it be retweeting or reposting a Facebook consideration. The second thing, and this is one thing that businesses often overlook, is using social media for competitive intelligence. We all have competitors. We all want to know what our competitors are doing so we can compete, in a much stronger position. And when you start using keywords or key phrases associated with your competitors, you can get a feel quickly for not only what they're doing, but how they're reaching out to your same customers as well to try and get a feel for the best practices, the benchmarks that are out there.
Right. And I guess another thing that you might be able to do watching phrases or keywords is maybe get a lead. So let's say that you're in Wisconsin and you help companies with their office space needs. Maybe you'll see somebody posting something that maybe they're looking for office space in your market area.
You absolutely can. Some of those pieces, those aren't always offered for free. You're not going to get the best results if you're relying on keyword searches for prospecting. But a lot of these tools, Hootsuite included, there are a lot of other tools that can do it. They will help you find those clients that you can prospect and hopefully provide services or answers to. I think about, we just had over in the cities, we had the Super Bowl earlier this year, and you've seen a lot of businesses looking and tracking what people are looking for and then responding to their tweets, their Facebook posts, their Instagram posts, almost immediately saying, hey, you're looking for a place to have dinner, come try us out. That works when you have a very concentrated group of customers, but to do that on a regular basis is very challenging because you have to respond so quickly. If you're going to try and do prospecting, you're going to want to set up alerts, and those are typically paid-for features because you can't be looking at social media all the time, and the window to respond is so short, so you have to keep that in mind as well, Michael.
Yeah, that's a good point. And I think if you do one thing and your business is really concentrated in one area, you do one thing, it could be worth to have some paid services that track that. And where do you draw the line as far as taking the time to do this yourself if you're a business person or you operate or run a business, and then maybe considering getting outside sources to come in and help you with it?
I would start with your level of comfort and experience. If you feel comfortable doing it and you have the experience to do it or the time to learn, that would be a good chance for you to move forward by yourself. But what we are finding is that small businesses are typically outsourcing these functions to experts, whether they are communication firms, marketing firms, even interns at your local university. They typically have more time, they're a little more savvy, and the ROI, even though it costs a little bit more than your own time, typically you see a lot more success if you have someone with that level of expertise.
Right. And what are some of the mistakes people would like to or should avoid in social media for business practices?
Don't be on any channel that you can't engage with. You see so many businesses jump on 4 or 5 different channels and they only concentrate on 1 or 2. Only get on those that you can be engaged with and realize the rules that each channel has. With Facebook, you post 3 to 5 times per day. With Twitter, perhaps 5 to 7, 7 to 10 times per day. Pinterest, it's even more. At the end of the day, you have to be prepared to jump in with both feet to be successful.
Yeah, well, that's interesting you mentioned that because I'm on pretty active on Twitter and on LinkedIn, and I probably post 4 or 5 times or 3 or 4 times a day on average. But sometimes I've been at an event where I'm posting a lot, and all of a sudden I see a lot of people unfollowing me because they're not used to that. They're not used to seeing me post 25 times a day, right?
Right. I mean, and that comes down, Michael, one of the things that we also recommend is that you have a content calendar. Plan out what you want to say over the next week, the next 2 weeks, month. Just have an idea of how you're going to attack each social media channel and provide content that your users find valuable. Much like people, when they have great content or they think they have great content, they just start sharing. But does it match with what your customers are used seeing or what they're used to engaging with? And that's where that content calendar comes in.
That's a very good point. Yeah, one of the things I'll see sometimes with commercial real estate brokers is they're posting things that's interesting to commercial real estate brokers, but that's not their client, that's not their customer. It's somebody that maybe uses office space or operates a business in their city, and they should really post what's interesting to them, right?
Right. It's all about what the customer wants to interact. When we look at social media, you want to provide value. And too often we think that value is in talking about us. I tell clients it is the 90-10 rule. 90% of content you post should be about interests that your core customers have, and 10% about you. It is more important to perhaps talk about the local neighborhood where your facilities are located at for for your current clients, your potential clients. Give them some insight about not only who you are, but where your facility is located at. And this is challenging. I mean, you're a small business owner. You want to use this channel to talk about you, but in social media, it's all about creating those relationships, those organic relationships. It's a lot like if you and I were talking, at a cocktail party or at one of the conferences we run into each other, and if I spent 10 minutes just talking about myself, you would have tuned me out right away.
Right.
And that's what happens with social, is that we get too wrapped up in talking about ourselves that we lose sight of the fact that social media is about that connection, those relationships.
Yeah, we're talking to Dr. Eric Bray about social media strategies for businesses, and I think that's a very good point. And what are some other tips that you would give business users that maybe mistakes or avoid, or maybe something that is new to think about to help them be more efficient?
Always think about who your customer is and what their interests are. This sounds very mundane, something that we all think we think about, but when it comes to social media, you really have to have a true understanding of what their passions are and what they want to interact with. I can talk about posting so many times a day, which channels to choose, but at the end of the day, it all comes down to content and having content that your customers can learn from, can engage with, can share, can leverage in their own daily lives. If I'm following someone, I want to be able to maybe not learn something, but to have interest in it. And that's really not all about the business. It's what do I have interest in? And that, to me, that's the biggest mistake. If you get that right, you'll learn the rest of it. But getting away from talking about me and talking about them it's imperative.
Yeah, that's a good point. And when thinking about looking at content at the Commercial Real Estate Show website, we have a button called Sectors, because we find in commercial real estate a lot of times people are very sector oriented. They're interested in multifamily. They don't really want to hear about office or industrial, and they want to pick content that's based on their sector, and that's free information that's very current that people can share online. Tell me about influencers. How important are influencers, and how might our audience think about interacting with influencers to benefit their social media practices?
Influencers are a challenge because it doesn't work across every single industry. If I am selling products such as tennis shoes, t-shirts, to have an influencer, to have that big movie star or that A-list celebrity talk about my brand, that is a huge bonus. But when you talk about small businesses and those influencers, you're basically looking not for the biggest names, but you're looking for those people who have the most amount of followers that actually listen to them and make decisions based upon that. When you think about commercial real estate and you talk about the importance of business leaders, you have every local community has someone that a lot of people look up to. Getting them involved and saying good things about your brand is always a positive thing. But for real estate, it doesn't always work the best, especially when you talk about multifamily, commercial. That's a very business-oriented decision. And when you have business-oriented decisions, that's a very different decision-making process. When you buy consumer goods, it's much more from the heart. When you're buying office space, when you're looking for a home rental, that's much more of a business decision. And so influencers might not always be the most important thing to go after, especially when we're talking about real estate.
Right, and you talk about maybe someone that's kind of a celebrity advertising, but I love your point about maybe there's influencers in your community that are community leaders that people are listening to. And like you said, it's social media, the word social, right? You can build a relationship with them, maybe retweet them, try to build that relationship. That could be helpful.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It all comes down to, are you showing interest in someone? If you are, odds are they're going to show interest back. And if you have the right content, you have the right product or service that you're talking about or offering, that's where you get those influencers involved. It's a give and take relationship.
Very good. Well, Dr. Bray, as a closing tip for the audience, what would you leave them with related to social media for business?
Don't overthink it. Don't make it too complicated. focus on who your customers are, focus on content they want to read about, to engage with, and then measure to see what works best. Too often people try to get too fancy, they try to get too complicated, and they don't just focus on the core, and that's that relationship, that social relationship.
Yeah, that's good points, and appreciate you being on the show, Dr. Bray.
Thank you. I appreciate it, Michael. Anytime, sir.
Great, thank you. And we'd like to connect with you and Dr. Bray. His social media contacts will be on our show website, creshow.com, and we'd love to connect with you on. We're on LinkedIn, Twitter, we're on Facebook, we're on Instagram. I think we're on most social media sites, so please connect with us. And we're going to have more on social media for business, so stay with us. I'm Michael Bull. This is America's Commercial Real Estate Show.